until Papa started paying me to do Saturdays in the shop. My mother died when I was 6. I have a memory of being in the supermarket and losing her. I threaded up and down every aisle to look, and then I found her by the freezers. I was so relieved I could feel my heart throbbing in the roof of my mouth. She had her back to me. She was wearing a purple walking jacket and had her hand in with the ice creams. I ran up and put my arms around her thighs, pressed my face against her. "Honey," she said, "I'm not sure you've got the right person." I looked up at her and she wasn't my mother at all. She was much older in the face, and she had a few burst blood vessels under her eyes like tiny jellyfish. I jumped. I wanted to scream, but the noise wouldn't come up in my throat, so I just turned and ran as fast as I could down the aisle. I bumped into a man with a pot of yogurt and I knocked it from his hand. It split and went all over the floor, but I didn't stop running. I can't remember how I found my mother again, but I suppose I must have. She didn't die until the year after that. The sex hadn't gone how I'd imagined, but it had gone, and that was the main thing. I walked around that week feeling slightly lighter on my feet. I passed a mock GCSE paper in my maths class, which hadn't happened before. I performed very well at my butchery. Papa couldn't believe the consistency of my sirloins. He said he'd never seen anything like it, and even I had to admit they were quite lovely. The weekend after we first met, Ryan and I went on a country walk around a stately home that had its grounds open to the public. He drove me there with his dog, Petal, in the back. I'd brought Ryan a few nice chops wrapped in greaseproof as a gift, and I was devastated when he fed one to Petal. She was one of those chunky breeds with skin so tight that you could see the shape of her skull under it. I watched the muscles of her jaw working away at the chop and thought of all the effort I'd put into separating them, the careful layer of fat I'd left, thick as orange peel. On the walk, Petal either tried to start fights with other dogs or barked at sheep through the wire fence. She had a taste for them now. That much was clear. When we got back to the car park, Ryan and I had sex on the back seats. Petal sat in front of the steering wheel and watched us through the headrests. "There's a good girl," Ryan kept saying. I wished he was talking to me. It was a month later that I found out I was pregnant. I was in the shop, and the smell coming up off the mincer was so intense I had to run out to the street to throw up into the gutter. "Take a test," said Papa when I returned. I wiped my mouth on the sleeve of my workwear. It took me a moment to understand what he was saying, and when I did, I turned and walked back outside again. My vomit was a thin yellow bile on the tarmac. The man behind the counter in the pharmacy looked embarrassed when I asked to use the toilet, but I'd already paid for the test, so he let me. The 2 red lines flashed up immediately, clear as smit marks. I must have fallen asleep then, because the next thing I knew, I was curled on the floor of the cubicle, my forehead pressed against the cold porcelain of the toilet, and the man was knocking on the door to check on me. I have no idea how long I was lying there. I told Papa straight away. He was shaping some of the mince into burgers, and he didn't look up. The meat squelched in his hands as he spoke. "It'll happen, that," he said. "We'll get you sorted." We made the call that evening. The receptionist at the clinic booked me an appointment for 2 weeks' time. They didn't have anything available sooner. Papa sat at the kitchen table with me during the conversation, and when I hung up, we shared one of his pork pies with lots of mustard. They've won awards, those pies. Papa had special stickers made. I've asked, but he won't give me the recipe. He says that when he dies, those pies will die with him. I didn't make it to the abortion. I'm not sure I would have anyway. I've been having second thoughts. I'd started to switch off in lessons, or mid-conversation with Papa. I'd find myself imagining a little baby, fast asleep in my arms. When I eventually came around, I'd realise I had no idea what had been happening in the real world. I once found myself